known as the Sea Peoples, due to their long and illustrious history in the maritime world. During my time, the Philistines moved inland from the coast of Canaan and built their civilization. Each of these cities was governed by a tyrant. The Philistines were mortal enemies of mine and my people. They were known for their innovative use of iron, superior to the bronze used by the Israelites for weapons and tools. The progress of my people as a nation was constantly hindered by the Philistines, who possessed superior technology in their weapons and adopted a more aggressive military strategy. My people simply could not cope with the overwhelming military might of the Philistines. They worshipped three gods, Astarte, Dagon, and Baal-zebub, each with sanctuaries in various cities. My birth is as mysterious as I am. In those days, my father Manoah from the tribe of Dan lived in the city of Zorah. His wife, my mother, was unable to conceive, and they had no children. One day, the angel of the Lord appeared to my mother and said, "Although you have not been able to have children, you will soon conceive and give birth to a son. Therefore, be careful not to drink wine or any other alcoholic beverage, nor eat any forbidden food. You will become pregnant and give birth to a son. And his hair must never be cut, because he will be consecrated to God as a Nazarite from birth. He will begin to rescue Israel from the Philistines." The angel of the Lord who appeared to my mother generally seemed to be a man, but his demeanor was like that of an angel of God. He would be a Nazarite. The vow of a Nazarite is a very sacred vow. Under this vow, people are considered especially dedicated to God, allowing their hair to grow uncut, not drinking wine, not eating grape products, and avoiding any contact with the dead. Nazarites do not. A clean animal was one that had completely divided hooves and chewed the cud. Clean animals included oxen, cattle, sheep, goats, deer, etc. Unclean animals were pigs, camels, rock hyraxes, and rabbits. However, my case was special. I would have this vow from the womb. My mother also had to share in the vow during the time she carried me in her womb. Even in the social structures of my time, the announcement that the child would be male was especially well received. A son not only continued the family name, but also provided leadership in the home and in the community outside of Israel. A son was also key to an individual's welfare here and now, as well as in the afterlife. Then she ran and told my father that a man of God who looked like an angel had appeared to her and said that she would conceive and give birth to a son. My father prayed to the Lord and asked that the angel return to give more instructions about me. My father really wanted the manual for my life. "Lord, please let the man of God return again and give more instructions about the son to be born." God heard my father's prayer, and the angel of God appeared again to my mother while she was sitting in the field. Then my father asked, "When your words come true, what kind of rules should govern the boy's life and work?" The angel of the Lord told him, "Make sure your wife follows the instructions I gave her. She must not eat grapes or raisins, drink wine or any other alcoholic beverage, nor eat any forbidden food. He must be set apart and reserved for the will of God." The angel of the Lord honored my father's request for confirmation, but did not respond to his request to know the future. Instead, he called on my father to obey what God had already told them to do. The angel of the Lord proved to be wonderful by doing something miraculous, his ascending in the flame of the sacrifice towards heaven. And my father said to my mother, "Surely we will die, for we have seen God." But she said, "If the Lord had intended to kill us, he would not have accepted a burnt offering and a grain offering from our hands, nor would he have shown us all these things or told us such things at this time." My father perhaps knew what God had told Moses, "You cannot see my face, for no man may see me and live." He feared that because they had just seen the Lord, they would soon die. But my mother understood that God had not done so much for them only to abandon them now. The past work of God in our lives is a promise of his future care and blessing for us. My mother was an invaluable source of encouragement for my father's faith. She did not criticize him. The prophecy was fulfilled and I was born. The promise of the angel of the Lord proved true. My mother named me Samson. In ancient Israel, either parent could name a child, but accounts more frequently mention mothers naming their children. My name Samson derives from the Hebrew word for son, implying little son. As I grew, the Lord blessed me. The Spirit of the Lord began to stir in me from the moment of my birth. It was clear I was destined for greatness. As a child, I possessed unique strength, surpassing that of any common man. However, like all men, I was not immune to the temptations of the world. In a sense, I was truly a man of my time. One day, while I was in Timnah, a Philistine woman caught my attention. It was a case of love at first sight. I saw this woman and immediately wanted to marry her. When I returned home, I told my father and my mother, "A young Philistine woman in Timnah has caught my eye. I want to marry her. Get her for me." Timnah was a Philistine city in the land of Canaan, to the east of our camp. My father and mother opposed this as I was heading into Philistine territory. They asked, "Is there not a woman in our tribe?" But I told my parents, "Get her for me. She pleases me." And they saw that she was right in my eyes. Love at first sight is a powerful but dangerous thing. Although arranged marriages were not mandatory, they were the common practice at that time. Arranged marriages in my times often represented alliances intended to ensure family continuity through descendants. My parents advised against such a woman. In Israel, marriages generally took place within the clan or tribe, although there were no laws against marrying someone from another tribe. For an Israelite, marrying a Philistine represented a special problem, a commitment to peaceful coexistence and mutual acceptance between clans. However, I disregarded this and wanted that woman. My parents simply worried about what Moses had said. Moses declared, "We will not marry them, nor will we give our daughters to their sons, nor take their daughters for our sons, for they will turn our sons away from following the Lord God to serve other gods, and the wrath of the Lord God will burn against us and destroy us quickly." But I still wanted her, and after some time, my parents agreed. Now my family would have to travel to Timnah with me to seek my wife. The day arrived and we set off. During the journey, I was alone near the vineyards of Timnah, a unique place, as Nazarites were not to have anything to do with grape products in any form. Suddenly, a young lion attacked me. At that moment, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon me, and I tore the lion's jaws apart with my own hands. As I said, I was unique during my time. Asian lions were common throughout the region. Indeed, in the Fertile Crescent, the lion symbolizes chaos in the wild in all its forms. To me, the lion was more like a young goat. I left that place and did not tell my father or my mother about this event. We had to complete our mission. When I arrived in Timnah, I spoke with the woman and was very pleased with her. Everything seemed to be going well. Now I could return home and come back here for my own wedding. When the time for the marriage came, I had to leave home once more. During my journey, I passed by the same place where I had killed the lion some time ago. I looked at the lion's carcass and discovered that a swarm of bees had made some honey in the carcass. I scooped up some of the honey with my hands and ate it along the way, a reward for a victor. I also gave some to my father and mother, and they ate it, but I still did not tell them that I had taken the honey from the carcass of a lion. I did not tell them because that violated my Nazarite vow. While my father was making the final arrangements for the wedding, I organized a feast in Timnah, as was the custom for the young elites. It would be 7 days of pure celebration, literally a drinking party, a 7-day festivity at the bride's parents' home, culminating in the consummation of the marriage. The seriousness of the matter for me is underscored by the fact that my Nazarite status specifically prohibited me from consuming grape-derived products. People were officially married when their families reached an agreement. The dowry and bride price were exchanged, and the marriage was officially celebrated. Then the marriage was consummated, and the two became husband and wife. When the bride's parents saw me, they selected 30 young men from the town as my companions. I was the man of the moment with my own audience. I told them, "Let me pose a riddle to you. If you solve my riddle during these 7 days of celebration, I will give you 30 fine linen tunics and 30 sets of festive clothes. But if you cannot solve it, then you must give me 30 linen tunics and 30 sets of festive clothes." They agreed. "All right, let's hear your riddle." So I said, Out of the eater came something to eat. Out of the strong came something sweet. 3 days later, they were still trying to figure out the answer. On the fourth day, they told my wife, "Seduce your husband so that he will explain the riddle to us, or we will burn down your father's house with you inside. You invited us to this party only to impoverish us." Then my wife came to me crying and said, "You don't love me. You hate me. You gave my people a riddle but didn't tell me the answer." I told her, "I haven't even given the answer to my father or mother. Why should I tell you?" Yet she wept every time she was with me and continued so for the rest of the celebration. Finally, on the seventh day, I told her the answer because she was tormenting me with her crying. Then she explained the riddle to the young men. Before the sun set on the seventh day, the men of the town came to me with the answer, "What is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion?" The disposition of my Philistine wife to ally with her people against me was a great pain to me. In anger, I responded, "If you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have solved my riddle." My wife had achieved what she wanted through manipulation. I executed 30 of those enemies. I went to the city of Ashkelon, killed men, took their belongings, and gave their clothes to the men who had solved my riddle. But I was still furious about what had happened and returned home to live with my father and mother. Later, during the wheat harvest, when I was calm, I took a young goat as a gift to my wife. I said, "I will enter my wife's room to sleep with her," but her father did not let me in. My wife had been given to my companion, who had been my best man. What a best man! I won the battle but lost the war. My wife had really left me. "I thought you hated her," her father exclaimed, "so I gave her in marriage to your best man. But look, her younger sister is even more beautiful than she. Marry her instead." I was furious, enraged. Then I said, "This time, no one can blame me for what I will do to the Philistines." My anger was truly unleashed against her people. I took my time and went out to capture 300 foxes. I proved to be the master of beasts, first effortlessly subduing a lion and then capturing and manipulating 300 foxes. I tied their tails in pairs and placed a torch on each pair of tails. Then I lit the torches and let the foxes run through the Philistines' grain fields. I burned all their grain, including the sheaves and the uncut grain. I also destroyed their vineyards and olive groves. When the Philistines discovered who had done this, they asked, "Who did this?" "Samson," was the answer. They explained that it was because of my father-in-law's actions that I had destroyed their fields. Then the Philistines went and captured my wife and her father and executed them. When I found out what had happened, I made a vow, "For this, I will not rest until I have taken my revenge on you." I was in a complete spiral of anger. First, I was deceived. Then my wife married another, and now she had been executed. This is the bitter story of retaliation, trying to avenge the wrongs committed. I attacked the Philistines with great fury and struck down the rock of Etam. The Philistines, in retaliation, camped in Judah and spread out near the city of Lehi. When the men of Judah saw them, they asked the Philistines, "Why are you attacking us?" The Philistines said, "We have come to capture Samson. We come to take revenge for what he did to us." Then 3,000 men from Judah came down to apprehend me in the cave. When they arrived, they told me, "Don't you realize that the Philistines rule over us? What are you doing to us?" But I replied, "I only did to them what they did to me." Then the men of Judah said, "We have come to bind you and hand you over to the Philistines." I agreed, but made them promise not to kill me. "Though I am strong, I am not invincible." They responded, "We will only bind you and hand you over to the Philistines. We will not kill you." The fact that the soldiers from the tribe of Judah handed me over to the Philistines shows how much my people were under the oppression of the Philistines. They preferred to please their oppressors rather than support me, Samson. I submitted to them. Then they tied me with 2 new ropes and led me up from the rock. When we arrived at Lehi, the Philistines came toward me shouting triumphantly, but the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon me, and I broke the ropes on my arms as if they were threads of burnt linen. They fell from my wrists. Then I found the wrists. I took the jawbone of a recently deceased donkey, and with it I slew 1,000 Philistines. I was an army of one. Then I said, with the jawbone of a donkey, I have piled them in heaps. With the jawbone of a donkey, I have slain 1,000. After this great feat, I became a judge. You see, I belong to a group of people in history called judges. But that does not accurately reflect the meaning of my role. In Hebrew, the word means problem solvers. So you could say that I belong to a select group of individuals whose mission was to save God's people from themselves and from others. A judge is described in terms of their accomplishments. Now, I am about to embark on one of the most dangerous missions ever attempted. I judged Israel for 20 years. During this period, the Philistines still dominated the land. After that, I traveled to Gaza, where I saw a prostitute and subsequently had relations with her. The Gazites heard someone say, "Samson is here." They then surrounded the place and waited all night at the city gate to ambush me. They stayed quiet all night, saying, "In the morning, when it dawns, we will kill him." But I rested there until midnight, at which point I took the gates of the city gate and the 2 posts, lifted everything, bar and all, and placed them on my shoulders before carrying them to the top of the hill that faces Hebron. The gates I carried were not ordinary gates. War chariots needed to pass through the gates of major fortifications, and these gates had to be sufficiently wide. The gates themselves were composed of a pair of double wooden doors to prevent an adversary from entering easily. The doors had to be made of heavy planks and were secured on the side by a heavy horizontal beam that slid through slots in the door frames. The gates were reinforced by wooden posts whose exteriors rotated in stone sockets. The gates of Gaza that I tore from their sockets and placed on my shoulders weighed at least 400 to 500 kilograms, approximately 200 kilograms each. After all this, you might think I learned all my lessons, but I succumbed to temptation again, and my pride-laden choices led me down a treacherous path. It was during one of my journeys that I met Delilah, a woman whose beauty could entangle even the firmest souls. Her cunning seduced me, and I, driven by my desires, succumbed. I fell in love again and fell for a woman completely wrong for me. I wanted to be used by God, but I also gave in to the seduction of sin. I zealously maintained the external features of my Nazarite vow, while at the same time blatantly sinning with a prostitute. I did what almost all of us do when we are deceived by sin. I compartmentalized my life and imagined that there were some categories God cared about and others he did not. Once again, I was in Philistine territories, and the rulers were thirsty for blood. The Philistine rulers saw an opportunity to capture me and extinguish the flame of rebellion burning within my heart. Then they went to Delilah and offered her 10,000 pieces of silver for her deeply in love. But it was with money that she was truly enamored. 100 cycles were equivalent to over 63 kilograms of silver. She accepted their offer and then said to me, "Please tell me what makes you so strong and what would be needed to tie you up securely." I replied, "If I am tied with 7 fresh bowstrings that have not been dried, I will become as weak as any other man." So she tied me with those. She had hidden some men in one of the rooms of her house and shouted, "Samson, the Philistines have come to capture you." But I snapped the bowstrings as a piece of string sizzles when it burns with fire. Thus, the secret of my strength was not discovered. Then Delilah knew I was strong, but she also knew that there could be something that could bind me, and that was indeed true. I responded, "If I am tied with new ropes that have never been used, I will become as weak as any other man." So she took new ropes and tied me with them. Men were hidden in the inner room as before. And again she shouted, "Samson, the Philistines have come to capture you." But once more I broke the ropes from my arms as if they were threads. Then Delilah said, "You are making a fool of me and telling me lies. Now tell me how you can be tied up securely." I replied, "If you weave the 7 braids of my hair into the fabric on the loom and tighten it with the pin, I will become as weak as any other person." Then, while I was asleep, she wove the 7 braids of my hair into the fabric and tightened it with the pin. Again she shouted, "Samson, the Philistines have come to capture you." But I woke up, pulled out the pin in the loom, and freed my hair. She complained, "How can you say you love me when you don't confide in me? You have mocked me 3 times and still haven't told me what makes you so strong." She tormented me with her crying day after day until I was sick of hearing it. Finally, I shared my secret with her. My hair has never been cut because I have been dedicated to God as a Nazarite from my birth. If my head were shaved, I would lose my strength and become as weak as any other man. She realized that I had finally told her the truth. Then she called the Philistine rulers. "Come back once more, because he has finally told me his secret." The Philistine rulers returned with the money in their hands. Delilah made me sleep with my head on her lap, and then called a man to shave off the 7 locks of my hair. In this way, she began to subdue me, and my strength left me. Then she shouted, "Samson, the Philistines have come to capture you." When I awoke, I thought I would escape as before and free myself. But I did not realize that the Lord had left me. I didn't know things were different. I had lived in compromise for so long that I thought it would never make a difference. At that moment, my strength disappeared, leaving me at the mercy of those who sought my ruin. Chained and shackled, once a powerful man, now reduced to a mere mortal, I could only watch as my captors celebrated their triumph. The Philistines captured me and gouged out my eyes. I would never see the light of day again for the rest of my life. This was indeed a cruel punishment from the Philistines. It's ironic that my attraction to women, unchecked by my own eyes, led me to this fate. I insisted on the freedom to do what I wanted, and that left me without any freedom at all. Sin has its wages, and this was my payday. My sin left me blind, captive, and enslaved. Before my blindness, captivity, and enslavement were only internal, but eventually they manifested externally. I was taken to Gaza, where I was shackled in bronze chains and forced to grind grain in prison. Now here I am, a blind and humiliated prisoner, but I have found solace in the remnants of my faith. In the depths of my darkest hour, I cried out to the Lord God, seeking one last burst of strength to avenge my enemies. God gave me hope amid a dungeon. I placed my hand on my head and felt it beginning to grow rough, and then I put my hand on my beard and found it rough as well. Yes, everything would soon be all right. I would not regain my eyes, but my hair began to grow again. My sin made me a miserable loser, but I would regain my strength again because my hair was growing. I would be able to strike a blow for my people and for my God. The Philistine rulers were holding a great festival, making sacrifices and praising their god Dagon. They said, "Our God has given us victory over our enemy Samson." Dagon, also known as Dagon, was one of the oldest deities of Mesopotamia and was depicted as a creature that was half man, half fish. The god Dagon was considered the father of all other gods and was thus widely worshipped in what we call the cradle of civilization, where agriculture is believed to have first begun, also the area some call the Fertile Crescent. The statue of Dagon resembled a gigantic man. Some depictions show him as a triton, which is a human with fish features below the waist. Some scholars have called him a fish god, which makes sense given his association with the Philistines and their location along the coast. During my time, the son of Dagon, Baal, was worshipped in various ways throughout the land. Dagon was worshipped in temples that could be found throughout Mesopotamia. According to the Bible, the cities of Beth Dagon, Gaza, and Ashdod were home to some of the most important temples. He was worshipped through offerings and participating in festivals. When people saw me, they praised their God, saying, "Our God has delivered our enemy into our hands. The one who killed so many of us is now under our power." The followers of Dagon sent a direct message to everyone on the land, responding with, "Our God is stronger than the God of Israel because we conquered Samson." My disobedience led others to deny God. Half drunk, the people demanded, "Bring out Samson to entertain us." So I was taken out to entertain them and made to stand between the pillars that supported the roof. The Philistines continued to mock me at this great display. They used a young boy to watch me. I asked the young servant, guiding me by the hand, "Place my hands against the pillars that support the temple. I want to lean on them." Now the temple was completely filled with people. All the Philistine rulers were there, and there were men and women on the roof watching me. I am praying to the Lord God, Sovereign Lord, remember me again. O God, please strengthen me just once more. With one blow, let me pay back the Philistines for the loss of my 2 eyes.